you serious right now? Oh my god. Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. So welcome to Rambling, a podcast where I talk about everything and anything because I'm a certified yapper. And if I could get paid for it, I would love that. But I'm not paid for it yet. Yet. I will be. Watch me. So, I'm going to take these off because I can't see very well with them. And I honestly kind of want to see you, even though, like, I technically can't. But technicalities, okay? Technicalities. No one cares about technicalities. Anyways, I'm using a different mic today, which is actually just another phone that I have lying around. But honestly, phone mics are actually really good. I don't know why more people don't use them. Anyways, so today I wanted to talk about a little bit of something. This is different from my other podcast episodes that have been mainly like, how do you say it? Personal rants, if you will. They've been personal rants, and this time around I kind of want to like film something completely different. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to talk about my personal life, but rather my personal opinions on events that are going around, you know, on social media, on the internet. You know, they're there for a reason. And in my humble opinion, I think I have good opinions. So you can take that with a grain of salt. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about this Desi Discourse that happened on TikTok a couple weeks ago. I know I'm a little bit late to the party and everybody already gave their opinion, but my opinion matters too. Okay, so we're going to give my thoughts on this. So for a little bit of context, I think for the majority of my life, I remember like explaining what the frick is going on with the lighting, dog. Oh, that's nice. Don't just ignore what's going on here, okay? So since I can remember the thing that I've always explained my entire life is, who am I? Okay, so in that sense, where am I from? Why am I from there? Explain your identity, and it's given me an identity crisis for as long as I can remember. But for context, for your sake, I'm half Pakistani and half Costa Rican, but I was born and raised in the UAE. What does that mean exactly? That means that I am just a multicultural person, okay? I'm multicultural, and I speak a lot of different languages, and I understand a lot about diversity, because I myself am a diverse person. In the UAE, though, I went to a very predominantly Desi school. What does that mean? That means that in my school, the majority of the population that went to the school were people from Pakistan, like myself, Indian, Sri Lankan, Bangladeshi, and here and there would be like a person who was very, very different as well. We did have a couple like Kenyan people, and also a lot of like Sudani and Lebanese, Egyptian, Syrian people. So like more so like in the Arab population. However, the majority of the people who were students were from South Asian countries. So, even though like I only saw a couple things of my culture from my dad at home, a lot of the stuff that I learned about culture and how there were tradition and practices and practicing language, I learned a lot of that in school. So because it was a very predominantly, again, Desi school, I learned a lot about how to be Desi through friends and kind of like the culture at school. A lot of the things that I learned like from you know, traditions, culture, even you know, misogyny and how it worked. I didn't really have the concept of what sexism or misogyny was until I was in 4th grade, because in our school, after 3rd grade, all the way from 4th grade to 12th grade, the classes were separated. So girls only classes, boys only classes, but these classes were also like in separate buildings. So a girls only building and a boys only building, and girls and boys were not allowed to interact. For the whole like 14 years that I was there, girls and boys were not allowed to interact. You were not allowed to talk. You were not allowed to see each other because, God forbid, you see each other for more than 3 seconds. She's going to be pregnant. She's going to be pregnant. Watch. And it was exaggerated completely. Another thing that I remember like vividly from 4th grade when I, started these only like, how do you say it? Like girls only classes, or like in being in girls section with girls only classes. My folks from school who know me know what I'm talking about. I remember vividly in 4th grade, like being in girls section with girls only classes. My first memory of like being a woman, like being different to that of a man, is lunch periods or lunch break for girls would be after 5th period and boys would have it after 4th period. And I remember like me and my classmates asking our teachers, like, why do the boys get to eat first and then the girls? And all of our teachers would say the same thing, being like, it's because boys, they get hungrier. They need to eat more. Girls, you can wait. You need to have patience. You need to learn how to have patience. And I remember, like, a lot of us were really mad about that. And we didn't really understand, like, why boys got to eat first and girls had to eat later. And boys would have, like, a 30-minute lunch break. And girls would only have a 15-minute lunch break. In, like, an 8-hour day of school. Excuse me, what? And it was really annoying, and I finished all of elementary, middle school, and high school in that same school. So I kind of became accustomed to a lot of these toxic patterns of thinking because of these cultural norms that were being practiced at school. Only for me to get out of school and understand that this isn't how the real world works. For more context, after I graduated from high school, again, a segregated school, I came to Costa Rica for my university. And here, there is no such thing as segregated schools. There are a couple, like, girls-only schools, I believe, like, 1 or 2, but they're the last ones that exist, and a vast majority of schools that were segregated are now co-ed. So here, the concept of segregated is really weird, number 1. And number 2, I had no idea how to interact with the opposite gender because I thought it was a sin. And on top of being, like, a very cultural thing in my school, it was also a lot about, like, religion and being like, this is a sin, don't talk to boys, don't do this, don't do that, because you, as a woman, have more self-control than that of a man. Sorry. I don't know why my grammatical structure went wrong there. But yeah, like, essentially it was like, as a woman, you have to have more self-control because a man does not have self-control. And so growing up, we had this idea of like, okay, if I talk to a man, I look at a man or whatever it is, I'm sinning. Like, I'm committing a sin. Only for me to come to the other side of the world and realize, like, okay, like, the whole world works like this. Like, everybody has to interact for X, Y, Z reason, right? So what am I supposed to do? I can't be at university and be like, oh, sorry, I can't do this group project because I can't work with boys. No one gives a frick, okay? No one cares. No one actually cares. And also, like, work environments. What was I supposed to do in work environments? And work and group projects and university and talking to professors. Like, how was I supposed to deal with all of that? I'm sorry, I sound mad, but it's because I am mad. I am mad because I grew up conditioned to believe that interacting with the opposite gender was wrong. And all of a sudden, it's like, you have to do it anyways because the world works like this. Only to, like, have to unlearn so many toxic patterns and go to therapy. And I still struggle with a lot of different things when it comes to, like, interacting with men. But overall, these environments kind of, like, shaped a lot of my perception of the world and perception of religion as well. And that's why I struggle with religion sometimes. And that's a topic for a different time. But that's a little bit of context of why I wanted to talk about this. Because I find it I find it very curious. I find it like very interesting that, people have different experiences within the same community, and mine is valid and all other people's experiences are valid, but not all experiences are the same. So I really wanted to talk about that. So now that you have your little like history lesson with me, we're gonna talk a little bit about the video. So recently on Desi TikTok, a creator named Izza Talks made a video about the South Asian community and its reality, and went to create a list of things that happen within the community that are deemed toxic and that should change, right? So let's watch that video.
Today I will be giving you a glimpse into the South Asian community. If you are South Asian, then you can both relate and change these toxic patterns. And if you are not South Asian, then stop being so ignorant and learn about someone else. Our communities live to please others. What will people say is a viral statement that is always made. You will both be guilt-tripped and emotionally manipulated your entire life with this one-liner. Now let's move on to the treatment of women. Women are treated very differently than men. Now, if someone has a son and a daughter in the same house, the son is allowed to do whatever the hell he wants. He's allowed to go out, stay out overnight, go on vacations, have a girlfriend, do all of that. The daughter is constantly told that she cannot do any of the above because of two reasons. What will people say? And then her reputation. Her reputation is everything. Who's going to want to marry her? Our community has the highest beauty standards, starting with extreme colorism. The lighter you are, the more beautiful you are. Your features are discussed in front of you as a child. Imagine growing up and constantly hearing what's wrong with you. Kids are constantly compared from childhood into adulthood about their beauty, about their academics, everything. The only goal for women in our communities is to get married, and have kids. That's the biggest accomplishment. And once you get married, like they told you your life would change and you can do everything, guess what? You can't. You had to ask your parents for permission before marriage, and now you have to ask your husband and his family for permission. Let me elaborate. In most scenarios, it is recommended if you're the eldest son to live with your in-laws. Now, the dude is constantly torn between mom and wife. Who do I pick? And some moms are actually competitive and a little bit crazy. I'm going to pause for a quick trigger warning. If parents don't have the proper education or the tools, they are then taking their anger out, their frustrations out on their kids through physical abuse. And here's the crazy part. They think there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I know. Crickets. Now moving on to cousin marriage and arranged marriage, which are both still a big thing. If a toxic mother's toxic son is not married by a certain age, they will get the girl from back home. And when she does make her way here, she is their servant. She cleans, she cooks, she tends to them all day. And the dude still doesn't really care about her. Now moving on to the second trigger warning. There is so much domestic violence that they sweep under the rug. For some, that is part of life and they will never change it. I have a 3-year-old daughter. These are 3 things I'm doing actively to make sure she never falls into that. The first is letting her choose her profession. She doesn't need to be a doctor or engineer to be worthy. She can be anything she wants. The next is teaching her the art of confidence from a very young age. This girl is going to be so strong that if anyone even tries to compare her, she will put them in her place no matter how old you are. And this third pointer is actually for us as parents, South Asian parents. Don't discipline through fear. If you have to use physical force to discipline someone, you're just giving that monster inside you what it needs. You're not really disciplining.
Okay, so this creator, as you can see, went through several different points, and she's made several videos about the topic. However, this is the one that she first made, and was the one that a different creator and lots of other creators replied to. So I actually kind of want to go through the points that she made and talk about them. Perhaps you're not in the Desi community / South Asian community yourself, and there are things that you might not understand. I know a lot of people who do listen to me don't share my culture or don't come from my culture. So here is a little bit of context on those different points, just so that you understand better, and then you can understand the discourse around it. So number 1 on Izzy's list is our communities live to please one another, aka what will people say, is a common phrase. You will both be guilt-tripped and emotionally manipulated your entire life with this one-liner. I've heard this a lot of times, specifically in school. not so much at home. My parents weren't what will people say kind of people. However, at school, it was definitely a huge thing. So in school, this was definitely a big thing, especially when they would use the phrases like, "Oh, you're big girls now. You need to be disciplined. You need to behave. You need to act right." Or in fact, for example, I was in the school of mine was very academicist. So academics were 100% what you were supposed to focus on. Nothing else in life mattered, not your mental health, not creative skill, not anything, right? It was just how many A's and A pluses you can get throughout your high school or school career. So for me, academics have always been my very weak point. I don't consider myself the most academic person. I do consider myself a nerd, but I don't consider myself good at academics necessarily, especially not the traditional like STEM, science, math type. That's not me. That's not for me. And I acknowledge that. I was just not meant for those kinds of things, and I don't mind. However, in my school, where this was really important, like they would emphasize like I would get nowhere in life if I didn't excel at these subjects. And a lot of the times when I would get a failing grade, because inevitably that was going to happen, especially like around from 6th, 5th grade all the way to like 10th grade, I was failing 3 to 6 classes because it was just so difficult for me. Apart from like having ADHD and really bad professors, etc., etc. A lot of the time when I would get these like bad grades, it's like, what are people gonna say about you? Like, what are people gonna think about you? Like, that you're stupid. And they wouldn't say the word stupid explicitly, but if you know anything about Pakistani or Desi society, is like the community or the society will say slow in terms of the R word that I'm not going to use, but if you catch my drift, you catch my drift. And this was a very common occurrence, especially for me and people like me who had a really hard time with academics and studying or studying habits or just simply studying and just not getting the grades that were enough for the school. So a lot of the time it was like, what are people going to say about us? People are going to look at you and they're going to say like, oh, you came from this school and you didn't perform well, and they're going to think bad about our school, and it's all going to be because of you. And this is a very common occurrence in Desi society and community. Like, this is something that people will talk about, and this is about anything. Like I had friends who would be like, oh, if you look a certain way, what will people say about you? If you're too fat, what are people going to say about you? Because they would say things like directly to your face like that. Or even for me, like I have always been very thin my entire life. And people would be like, oh, like what are people going to say about you? Or what are people going to think about you if you're so skinny? You need to eat more. And it's like, I'm 13. Like, what do you want me to do? And I remember like receiving that comment a lot growing up, being like, oh, okay, like, so you're healthy? Because in Pakistani the community, it's not like they will never call you fat to your face, but they will say like, oh, thoda healthy ho gayi hai. Like these kinds of like comments, like healthy meaning equals to like fat. So like Desis and Urdu, it has such a way of like being able to insult somebody in the most sugar-coated way. And it all revolves around like what people will think about you, what would people say, and no one actually cares. Everybody's like in their own lives, but that's like a very common phrase. And when she says this, it's right. Like, this is the lives of a lot of people. A lot of people's lives revolve around what are people going to say about you. The next point that she goes through is the treatment of women. Women are treated different than men, i.e., the son can do whatever, but God forbid their daughter doing such a thing because of 2 reasons. What will people say? And that her reputation will be tarnished. Her reputation is everything, and who is going to marry her if it's ruined? So this is, again, true. Going back to my point initially, where I was giving context about how men and women were treated differently. This was like not only just within like because our classes were separated or segregated sections or whatever, it would go as far as, like, for example, again, like how I said about the lunch periods being different, and like boys would have like a longer lunch break and girls would have less lunch break. But this also extended itself to like whenever there would be like lectures, or sometimes universities would come to like give a speech about their university, and oh look, come to our university with all the amenities and pay a fortune and a kidney to come here, like that kind of stuff. We would have to go to the auditorium, and in the auditorium there was only one auditorium in the whole school, so boys and girls would have to sit separately. There were sections of the auditorium where girls could sit and boys could sit, but oftentimes in those, if you wanted to ask a question, you had to write it down as a girl. But if you were a boy, you could just lift up your hand and you could ask the person giving like the speech or the lecture or whatever your question directly. But if you were a girl, no, you can't talk because boys are here. And in the presence of boys, you will write down your question and we will pass it on to the person presenting. And it was like, again, it was so frustrating that we couldn't talk in front of the presence of men and boys. And when we were like so the school also had like a gymnasium, and the gymnasium was in the boys' side of the school. So as girls, we would have to like first ask permission to use the gymnasium. Then we would have to ask a teacher to go with us. And then when we were there, and we would have to like go through the boys section to go to the gymnasium, it's like, girls, look down. Girls, look down. Don't look up. You're not allowed to look at the boys. But then so this is another part, but like if like there's a library and there was only one library and alternating days for girls and boys, right? So on like Sundays it was for girls and on Mondays it was for boys. I'll get to the Sunday Monday thing a different day, but so like if you needed to like give back a book or borrow a book on a Monday, you weren't allowed to, because that day is where like the boys are using the library. However, on a girls' day, so if it was Sunday and it's like girls can go use the library, boys were still allowed to go inside and give a book or borrow a book or whatever. Or sometimes they would like just chill in the library and bunk classes, and like that was like a oh, it's okay, boys will be boys. And that was so annoying growing up. But God forbid a girl did that. God forbid a girl went into the library on a freaking Monday when it was boys' day, and you would get like a thing on your record, like on your school record. They would be like, oh, we're gonna put like a discipline report because you broke the rules, and we're gonna call up your parents, and like, who's gonna believe you? And it doesn't matter what you were doing, you're always gonna have bad intentions. You just went in there to look at boys and yada yada. So this idea of, and this isn't just like within like stupid things like this at school, it went on for a lot of things as well. For example, once, I think I've talked about this story before, but at school we weren't allowed, as girls, we weren't allowed to like have sweaters in the winter that weren't like brown. Our uniform was like an ugly like poo-poo brown color. I wish I was joking. I don't want to put a picture because I feel like people will find out what school I went to, even though they don't use that uniform, I think, anymore. But we had like a pee-pee poo-poo brown colored like uniform, and it was ugly. And we weren't allowed to wear the uniform with like a how do you call it, like a sweater that wasn't ugly pee-pee poo-poo brown either. So one time as seniors, we got our senior jackets, and they were like senior varsity jackets in burgundy and white. And like, even that was like, oh, you can't do that. Like, that's bad. You're not following the rules. And what are people going to think about you? What are your parents going to think about you? And all of these different things. And it was just, and boys, I think they could wear like whatever jackets or sweaters that they wanted and would get away with it. Like, nobody gave like two flying ducks about anything. So it was really frustrating. You can tell how frustrated I am right now. And I think how long have I been talking for? Half an hour. You see how riled up I am about this. And we're not even halfway done that. So to speed through a little bit more of like the points so that I don't just keep talking about the same thing. If you want context about something, let me know in the comments and I'll give you context, and maybe I will extend myself and make a part 2 about this video. But anyways, the next point Isa goes through is our community has the highest beauty standards, starting with extreme colorism. The lighter you are, the more beautiful you are. Your features are discussed in front of you as a child, growing up and constantly hearing what is wrong with you. Kids are constantly compared from childhood to adulthood about their beauty, academics, and everything. This is again true. This will always like also round up with the what will people think about you, etc., etc. I think colorism in itself is very self-explanatory. So again, if there's something that you don't understand, let me know. The next point is the only goal for women in our community is to get married, and have kids. That is the biggest accomplishment. And once you get married, likely, like they told you, your life will change and you can do absolutely everything. But newsflash, guess what? You can't. You have to ask your parents for permission before marriage. Now you have to ask your husband and his family for permission after marriage. So that's unfortunately true, and I hope that's self-explanatory as well. Next point, in most scenarios, it is recommended if you're the eldest son to live with your in-laws. Now the dude is constantly torn between mom and wife. Who do I pick? And some moms are actually competitive and a little bit crazy. This has a lot to do with like emotional incest, enmeshment, and a lot of lack of therapy for a lot of moms, and also because a lot of moms end up being married in these arranged marriages from the previous point and don't really do what they want or what they wish they would have done in their lives, and now they're married and they have to tend to all of these people, their husband, their kids, their in-laws, their extended family that isn't even theirs. And so oftentimes they kind of like project their ideal life or ideal life onto their sons and their daughters. And oftentimes if there's an eldest son, the eldest son will kind of have this weird emotional incest, enmeshment relationship with their mother. And their mother, like, no daughter, and like no daughter-in-law, and no woman will ever be enough for her son, because my son is mine and he will always love me before his wife. So that has a lot to do with these kinds of issues. And these are penetrated more and more within society and the community because it's seen as like, it's not a problem. Like, yes, your mother comes first. And your wife, well, you can deal with her later. Next one, which has the trigger warning, is if your parents don't have the proper education or tools, they are then taking their anger out, their frustration out on their kids through physical abuse. They think that there's nothing wrong with that. Again, self-explanatory. The next one is maybe a little bit more confusing to understand, which is the cousin marriages and arranged marriages. They're still both a big thing. Cousin marriages. We'll get to that one in a minute. But arranged marriages is basically when your families of two people set them up, essentially, and you are to marry this person that your family set you up with. This is very common practice in Pakistan. It is confused with religious ideas, but it's not actually an Islamic or, it's not an Islamic value necessarily. You're not, you can do this if both parties are consenting, but if one or both are not consenting, then it is not a valid marriage within the religion. So I just want to highlight that. However, in Pakistan, this does not matter. A lot of these things are not religiously done. They are culturally done based on bad religious understanding. And yeah, arranged marriages happen a lot, especially against people's will, usually against the woman's will, because why would she have any vote in who she marries? That's not a thing. Why would she do that? She doesn't matter. Oftentimes, this happens a lot, again, to women, where they have to marry somebody because their family said so, and that's it. So this is, again, a very toxic pattern within the community. Cousin marriages are a little bit more confusing because cousin marriages is essentially when two cousins, first cousins, get married. And the reason this happens a lot is because there is this excuse that exists within the community of we know their family, they know our family, we'll just be more family if you get married. And people don't really think about like the genetic consequences this has, as well as like this weird idea of like it's just better to marry somebody within the family. So if you're thinking inbreeding, yeah, a little bit, because you still have like similar genetics. This is a very big thing in Pakistan, and it's still very positively seen. A lot of people think that this is okay. Obviously, in the Western world, this is seen as, you know, the I word, and people will think it's weird. And in fact, it is weird. People, again, use the excuse of like religion, as in like religion doesn't say anything against it, but that doesn't mean that it's, you know, exactly advocated for. In fact, I don't think it's advocated for. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, moving on. If a toxic mother's son is not married by a certain age, they will get the girl from back home. When she does make her way here, she is their servant. She cleans, cooks, tends to them all day. The dude still doesn't really care about her. Again, self-explanatory. The second trigger warning here is in the list is there is so much domestic violence that they sweep under the rug. For some, that is a part of life, and they will never change it. Again, self-explanatory. I think this happens in a lot of elder cultures, but in specifically talking about Desi community, this is very true. So Isa also goes on to talk about how she has like a 3-year-old daughter, and she's actively trying to teach her daughter to prevent these things, let her choose her profession, teach her the art of confidence, and that there is no such thing as discipline through fear, which I think the Desi community in South Asian countries, like cultures, stand as like they use the base, like that's their foundation, like discipline through fear. In fact, a lot of my high school, you know, was like that. It was like discipline through fear, teaching through fear. You must do this because you are scared of me, because I'm more powerful than you. And I find that that's very sad that a lot of these women, because we're teachers, like female teachers, exerting their power over 10, 12-year-olds, you know. But I digress. Again, she makes valid points. Isa makes valid points, and it's worth it's worth talking about. And I think I'm very grateful that she made this video, because again, a lot of people who are not from the South Asian community don't understand the context, and they don't really know that these things happen behind the scenes, because we try to be like, oh, like what will people think, and we try to look picture perfect for people from the like looking from the outside in. There was a sea of creators who ended up responding to Isa's video and saying that they really enjoyed it, and that she had made valid points, and that her experiences validated her points validated their experiences, because they too had gone through similar things in their lives. However, there was this one creator by the name of Rima who kind of debated Isa's points and made a video with her experience, saying that she hadn't gone through any of these things. So we're gonna watch that video. 3, 2, 1. It's a different day. I'm filming on a different day because last time I think I had to leave to do something, and you know what? You don't need to know the context. We're back, okay? For you, it's only been a second. For me, it's been like a week, okay? So just forget about it. Anyways, I don't know where I left off, but I wanted to talk about one of the creators who kind of like gave her own opinion on the original video by Isa, and a lot of people in the community, in the South Asian Desi community, kind of like talked about her and how the way that she had spoken in the video or in the TikTok.
The way a girl just came on my For You page, absolutely degrading the South Asian community, is so crazy to me. I don't know if she's Pakistani or Indian. I've never seen her before. She shows up on my page and she's like, this is the reality of being born in a South Asian community, and goes on to say all of these extremely derogatory blanket statements like, does our culture have issues? Yeah, absolutely. Do we normalize things that shouldn't be normalized? Yeah, absolutely, as does every culture. that just like is a very real problem. But she started to make these insane blanket statements that I think when you are representing yourself, like I'm Pakistani representing myself on the internet, like for other people to learn about my culture, and like that's the take you're gonna, you're gonna a whole like 3 minute just bashing on the community. She made an entire list, and I'm gonna go down each one and tell you how there is an example of a girl from a Pakistani community that hasn't lived through any of these experiences, alhamdulillah, but I know that I am not the only one. Okay, so here we go. The first thing she says is that Pakistani people or South Asian people live to please others, and what will people say is like the common phrase. My parents actually had, like, I explicitly remember my mother growing up being like, I don't care what anyone else does, my kids are going to XYZ. We never grew up in a family that was like, what will people say? We always just did our own thing. Then she says women are treated differently than men. I don't have a point of reference on this because I only have 2 sisters, so I don't know what my parents would have done in that scenario, but they've always treated us extremely equal. She said that there is extreme colorism, and that if you're lighter, you're considered more beautiful. My mom is like 1,000 shades lighter than me. Like, think like northern Pakistan. Like, she's like very fair. My dad is darker toned. I land somewhere in the middle, probably on the darker tone. My mom has never once has my skin tone been just like, never once has she come at me with some weird bleach age. Like, it's never been a thing, ever. That's so crazy. I know it exists, like, in general, like a lot of communities around the world, but in my family, like, that's not every South Asian household. Then she says they play the comparison game amongst siblings and people. My parents actually are like, they parent me and my sisters very differently based on our personalities. The way that my mom parents me is so different than how she parents my older sister, which is so different than how she parents my younger sister. And she tells us, she's like, you guys have very different personalities, so I have to like adjust to your personality. She knows that I'm inherently very rebellious, so she never tells me what to do. She lets me like move through failing to see for myself, and then she's always there on the other side to catch me. She doesn't treat my sisters that way. Like, we don't play the comparison game. She adjusts because she's a good mother and she knows her children. Then she says the goal is to get married. My older sister is a doctor. I'm in law school. My younger sister's an engineer. Our goal in our family was to be educated. And they did not like say we have to. They ended up with a doctor, a lawyer, and an engineer because they made room for us to be our own people. None of us are married. Like, will we be? Inshallah, yes, because we want to be, but that was never, our parents focused on education. And then she says, before marriage, you're seeking permission from your parents, and after marriage, you're seeking permission from your husband. On the contrary, our parents have been very much like, you take your time with who you're going to choose because that's a decision for a lifetime. Like, I would never choose someone. I don't ask permission from like, I'm a grown woman. I don't ask permission. I talk to them like a grown adult, and I will do the same with my husband. Not every South Asian household. Then she says, if you are not married by a certain age, or your whatever, cousin marriages, arranged marriages are a thing, or they'll just go get you hitched from a girl back home. Again, me and none of my siblings we're not married. None of us have been sent overseas. Actually, my mom just said no to a man in Pakistan for me because she's like, you drink, my daughter's not going to be good with that skirt. And I have so many cousins, 20 plus cousins. Every single one of them is love marriage on their own timeline. We don't have a single arranged marriage or cousin marriage for like my close cousin. It just like, to say these blanket statements about the Pakistani community, the South Asian community, is so, honestly, it's blasphemous. There are so many people that raise their children with love and adoration and great qualities. Again, do we have issues? Yeah, but for her to come on here and represent us that way, I hope you know that there are people like my family in the world.
Okay, so after watching the video, I did take some notes because I was like, well, there's a lot of things, we need to talk about in this case. There's a lot that she says that I honestly feel like, again, she's talking a lot about her personal experiences, and although that's fine, there's nothing wrong with her personal experiences. They're valid, but Isa was not talking from a point of personal experience. She was talking about something that, like, is a fact, and facts within the culture. How do you say it? Like, yeah, so there are facts within the culture that we already know. These are prevalent things that exist and have existed for years and years and years. And Rima, what she's doing is she's giving her personal experiences, and again, they're valid, but I don't feel like they're in my personal opinion, she's talking from a place of personal experience, and Isa was not. And that means, like, again, I don't know how many times I have to say it. Her experience is valid, but I don't think that they're very appropriate rebuttals to the initial points that Isa makes. And I want to do a little bit of a rundown on Rima's points and kind of compare them with Isa's points or my personal opinions. So, let's see. Where did she... So she completely invalidates Isa's points, saying that they're derogatory and what will people think about our community. Point number one from Isa's video is what? People pleasing. Pakistani people live for the phrase, what will people say? And this is giving that. She's saying in the video, Rima is saying in the video, like, what will people think about our community? I thought that wasn't our job. Like, I thought genuinely our job was not to worry about what other people think. And she's claiming that she didn't grow up in a household where, like, this was a question or this didn't matter, that what people thought was not a problem. So then why is this a problem for you? I'm a little bit confused. I don't really understand, but whatever. Next point, she too makes her own list to argue her points. So we're going to run these down. Rima says she is a person from the Pakistani community who has not lived any of these experiences that have been described in Isa's list. She also knows she's not the only one. To this, I only want to ask, fine, you have had a great childhood, a great upbringing. Your parents have parented you in the healthiest way possible. We don't really know you, but let's assume and give you the benefit of the doubt. So that's great. And you believe that the people around you have also not have had, and you believe that the people who are around you haven't had to go through experiences like this, and that's great. However, my question to you is, what kind of people are you around? Because a lot of people in the South Asian community, myself included, who have friends who are Desi, there are a lot of experiences that I didn't have to experience. Like, for example, colorism was not a thing in my home, but I know of people who were Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, etc., who within their homes had to go through certain things that dealt with they had to deal with colorism. So if it hasn't happened to you personally, what kind of groups are you around where nobody in your friend group or your acquaintances or people that you know hasn't gone through experiences that the vast majority of South Asian households have gone through? Like, I'm a little bit confused. It depends on your social circle, I guess, and the kind of people that you're surrounded by. I agree, but at the same time, like, these are very widespread issues within the community. So how are you saying that you have never met a person who's gone through any of these things ever? I find that a little bit suspicious, but again, benefit of the doubt. We don't know you, and I can't really just assume or judge you from just that one point that you're making. Isa says, you know, what we were talking about earlier, Pakistani people live to please others, which is the common phrase. And Rima says that her parents, her mom, didn't care about what people would say at all. Her family didn't worry about that, and they did their own thing, according to her. So, you know, that's great. Good for you. This is not very common in most South Asian households. Isa makes a point in her video about extreme colorism and that if you're lighter, you're considered more beautiful. Rima, her point is that her mom is shades lighter than her and her dad is darker and she's in the middle. Her mom has never told her to bleach her skin and she knows colorism exists, but it doesn't exist within her household. Again, valid point, your experience is valid, but that doesn't mean that this does not exist in other households or is not dealt with by a vast majority of people, both back home, immigrant households, etc., etc. This whole video, like, to me personally, gave, like, not all men vibes. Because she's going, like, not everybody has to go through this. Okay, that's fine. Again, that's great. In fact, we want that. But, you know, it's a very well-known fact that this is very widespread. But yeah, this is giving not all men vibes, in my humble opinion. She continues on to say not every South Asian household, which is what I was saying earlier about the not all men vibes. This is that. She literally says it in the video of, like, not every South Asian household. I'm not even gonna comment on this anymore. You know what I'm gonna say anyways. She continues on with talking about the point about cousin marriages and the girl back home. She says again, her and her siblings are not married, and that none of their cousins have had an arranged or cousin marriage. Again, just because it hasn't happened to you or your family doesn't mean that it doesn't happen to, again, a majority of the population of Desi people. She then goes on to say that blanket statements that, commenting directly to Isa's video, that blanket statements about the Pakistani community are blasphemous. And that there are so many people who raise their kids with love and adoration, I believe is the word she said. That there are issues within the community, but like their family, there are a lot of families like hers in the world. I don't doubt that. In fact, I believe that you're right. There are a lot of people who, you know, love is abundant and they will always love their children. That does not mean that just because you love your child or, you know, your family has a lot of love, doesn't mean that they deal with everything healthily, nor does that mean that all parents have a healthy parenting style. But what I like kind of feel like is, like, again, her experience is valid, but just because that's her personal experience does not mean that everything that Isa talked about in her video does not happen. In fact, it's something that happens all the time, every day. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether you're part of the diaspora or you are living in Karachi, Nazmabad, like, it happens. So, you know, just don't coming with this, like, these kinds of, like, videos I don't understanding all the time, you know. I don't want to sound mean, and I don't want to sound like, oh, her opinion or her personal experiences do not matter. But again, your personal experience is very unique to you, just as how my personal experiences are very unique to me. As I started the video explaining my personal experiences, those are very unique to me. I know that me and a handful of people have gone through experiences like that. So and also, like, my household was a very different household, and just like Rima, her household must have been a very different household. But I'm also very aware of people around me that I grew up with who are friends of mine from high school and growing up, and childhood friends who have gone through these things and who still go through like these kinds of things all the time. I have friends who like, for example, I have seen, like, people from my generation from high school, like, get married, like, within the last 2-3 years. Like, people have gotten married and people are, like, 21, 22, 23, right? And a lot of these people kind of just get married because they've been told like this is going to happen, like you have to get married, not because it is something that they've inherently like wanted to do and had been given the time to do. No, it's like this is an expectation, you have to do it, and what's it called, like comply. You have to comply with this idea of like every woman at your age from 18 to 25 usually will get married, right? And if you are past 25, you're a spinster. And if you don't want to believe that, don't. That's fine. And if that's not your personal experiences, that's great. You know, good for you. But this is a topic for a different day, but a lot of women especially are conditioned to believe, myself included, from a young age are conditioned to believe like our ultimate goal in life is to get married and, you know, have kids and take care of your husband. And a lot of girls, they grew up thinking like that's my only purpose in life, and so they go and they do that and they comply with the expectations of society, of, you know, and also like the society upholds like if you want to get married you have to be fair or you have to be white. I think white is never like a term that's used, but fair, you know, and issues with like Fair and Lovely and all these like commercials where the ladki, she has like long straight hair with the white face and she's getting married and her husband love her, but if you are dark with the curly hair, then God help you, you know, like these kinds of things are again very prevalent. And you can see if you go to Pakistan for a couple months, you just like, even if you like just watch Pakistani TV on a regular basis, like myself, I watch a lot of like Pakistani drama and like yeah, what's it called, like Geo and ARY Digital and all these like different like Pakistani channels. You see the ads, or you see the way that propaganda is put into these drama. Pakistani dramas are full of like the expectation of what the good girl of society should be. Because now, before, it used to be the woman doesn't work and she stays home and she deals with her like evil susral and takes care of the kids, and she's so responsible. And even though her husband's a pain in the ass, like she will work hard to maintain the family. And now it's gone even a step further with where like she does all of that on top of working a full-time job and being good at her job and being good at the house and being able to cook and clean and everything, while her husband doesn't do anything and she still has to deal with her evil susral. I did not breathe in that sentence. But like, if it's happening within Pakistani communication channels, aka like you can see these things on like social media, on like TV, where TV, a lot of like people don't have access to internet and the only way that they receive information is through TV. If this is on like dramas and commercials, ads, vagara, then like you begin to understand that this is something that is so deeply rooted within the culture. And by that I mean like these problems, colorism and the role of a woman in society, the role of women in marriages, the role of women in within her home, and the expectations that are put on her of like you have to get married and you have to get a good education so that you can get married, because now that's also like a biodata requirement, which if you don't know what a biodata is, it's essentially like a CV for marriage. Yes, that's a thing. That's a thing in like South Asia. That's a huge thing. And I know that this is like a topic for a different day, but what I want to say is like everybody's personal experiences are valid. Everybody's personal experiences are different and unique to them. And there are some households that have been able to like break the cycle of what culture teaches us and the toxicity that it has. And people are, you know, again, they break the pattern, they break the cycle, and they teach their kids a different way, while maintaining, you know, the good parts of culture. And I think that's something to applaud. But is that widespread? Is that the vast majority of people? In any culture, there will always be a lot of negative things and a lot of positive things. And it is up to you and me to decide what are the good things of culture, what are the bad things of culture, tradition, customs, etc., and what to take forward if we want to break the pattern and we want to break the cycle. And if we want to have children, to have those children and to teach them, and teach those around us. If you don't ever want to have children, teach those around us the good things about our culture, and to practice those things while setting aside and unlearning all of the negative stuff. So I think I'm going to leave the video and the podcast on that note. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed my very long-winded ramble. I really enjoyed making this video, scripting it, and kind of like talking out my points. I feel like I'm finally like letting out a lot of stuff that I have thought for a very long time. Hopefully I'll be able to like create more of these. If you have any suggestions of what kind of topics you would like me to talk about, leave them in the comments below. And if you want to support me so I can keep doing this, like and subscribe. If you want to kind of keep tabs on what I'm doing or when videos are coming out, you can follow my socials, Instagram and on TikTok. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for stopping by and listening to me. And yeah, that's it. Again, thanks. Stay weird. Bye. Are you snoring? Aw, he's asleep, so I guess he can't say bye today either.